The official newspaper files of the early West record many stories of famous and notorious characters of that period. Among them, Billy the Kid, the terror of the Old West in the 1880s. He was the most feared gunman and outlaw in the pages of history of the old or new frontiers of America.
Say, do you know where that sound clip is from? A classic show from TV's past? Find out where it's from on this special edition, the TV 100, on the Outdated Entertainment Hour. Welcome, everybody, to the Outdated Entertainment Hour. My name is Bob Smith. This is a very special show for you. That's right, the top 100 television series of all time. They could be on daytime, nighttime, overnight, doesn't matter. 3 TV junkies are going to look back at television from its earliest days through today and come up with our definitive list of 100 shows that can't be missed, that made an influence, and were exceedingly popular. We have 2 special guests, Joe Puccio, who you know from his website, GenerationXWire.com, and Steve Gennarelli, who's been on 1,000 different podcasts, and now we're graced by his presence again. Again, this one is his baby. He loves these list shows, so I said, Steve, if you want to do it, we'll do it. So I'll tell you what, get ready for a lot of fun on this one, and a lot of memories of television. Get yourself a nice beverage, a nice snack. It's not going to be a haul, but it's going to be a very in-depth look at TV. So hang out with us, will you? We'll be right back after this important message.
This is Joe Walsh. One thing I do when I'm not playing rock and roll is get on the air as an amateur radio operator. Also called ham radio, is a communication service provided by ordinary people just like you and me. We have a national emergency communication system in place 24/7, 365. Find out more about amateur radio at arrl.org/What is ham radio? See you on the air.
All right, everybody. I've got 2 very special guests for the TV 100, as we'll call it. First of all, a prolific podcaster. You've heard him on shows of various genres. He's a good buddy and a knowledgeable guy about all things media. It's Steve Gennarelli. Steve, welcome.
Thank you, Bob. It's great to be here. I'm really glad that we have a special guest joining us. And go ahead and please introduce him.
Yeah, we have a fellow may have heard from my other podcast. He is a noted journalist, writer. In fact, the previous episode, he did the horror movie lineup that went over so popularly. It's Joe Puccio. Joe, hi.
Hey, Bob. Hey, Steve. How you doing? I'm really happy to be here.
GenerationXWire.com is your jam, right?
Yes, sir. That is correct. And no, this is going to be a lot of fun, and I appreciate the invite. Talking TV with you 2 fellas.
Well, first of all, for you 2 guys, did this take a lot of work? Did you snap it right off the top of your head? Did you have to research? How did you come up with your list? Steve, we'll start with you.
Well, first off, I wanted to tell you just a little bit about me as far as why do I even feel qualified to put a list like this together? When I was 5 years old, my grandmother would take me by the hand to a little drugstore about a block and a half away. And at age 5, I wanted to buy a daytime TV magazine. And this is a long time ago. And this was a magazine that would tell you about all the daytime TV stars, mainly soap opera stars and game show hosts. That shows you how TV's changed in all these years. And at the time, I was just a 5-year-old kid. I really wanted to learn more about Dark Shadows, which was the TV show that was really my favorite TV show at age 5. And then as the years progressed in junior high, my good buddy Robert Klein and I in Binghamton, New York, we both purchased copies of this book called The Complete Directory of Primetime TV Shows by Tim Brooks and Earl Marsh. And we used to call it the Big Orange Book. It was this huge directory book, huge book that him and I would compare notes on. This is in the late 70s. The years went on. In recent years, and I'm sure Joe's aware of this, just in the last couple of years, Variety has put out a top 100 of TV shows of all time. Rolling Stone has done the same. IMDb has done it as well. And there's even a book out, TV the Book, that came out in 2016 by Alan Sepinwall and Matt Zoller Seitz, 2 TV critics. And they gave their list. And my biggest complaint with all these lists is that they were too current-centric. Most of these lists forgot about great shows from the 60s, the 70s, the 50s. And I said to myself, God, if there was only like an outdated podcast, something we could tackle this on together. And of course, I found out about Bob's show, and I've been harassing him ever since. And Joe's up on all this pop culture stuff. So it sounds like we have all the ingredients to put together a good outdated list of all-time classic TV shows.
All right, Joe, how about you? How bad was this, putting it together?
I thought about it. Initially I wasn't sure. I was either gonna really do a lot of research and really, spend a lot of time on it. But ultimately I decided to just sort of, I did some Googling. I kind of refreshed my memory on some shows I might have forgotten about. But for the most part, I really tried to do it mostly from just memory, just shows growing up watching. Shows that I maybe discovered later on, that were from years ago, that maybe I only discovered in the last 10, 15 years. Kind of a little of both, but I felt like that was the best thing to do, is just to sort of try to wing it for the most part. I thought it would be a lot more fun that way, although I guess, we'll find out soon enough.
Yeah, right. Now, Steve and Joe, did you use this as your own favorites first and foremost? What was your criteria? Because I don't know what my criteria was. I'll start by telling you, whether I liked the show or not didn't matter whether they made the list. There's a lot of shows on this list that I really don't like. However, in the history of television, a lot of these shows were very important in terms of either popularity or influence they had on future shows. So that's why they're on the list. I didn't care if I didn't like the show. I don't like Dallas at all. But Dallas made the list because it was a cultural phenomenon at the time. And I think it deserved placement. How do you guys feel about that?
Well, my intent was to do a authentic top 100, rating the shows from the high quality ones and the most important ones on the top, and then kind of go down and round out a top 100. But I'll be honest with you guys, I did put a lot of my favorites on the list just because I think a lot of the ones I liked have been forgotten about, and this is the Outdated podcast. What better place to kind of remind the world about these forgotten gems that are out there?
That's a great point. We are here to pay homage to the great stuff that we all enjoy. That's the whole idea of the show. It really is. But how about you, Joe? What was your thought on that?
I definitely did not do it from just my favorites. Like both you guys, though, I certainly put some of my favorites on, but I feel like those shows also could be considered the greatest, or at least on the top 100 list. But like you said, Bob, there are a lot of shows on this list that were extremely popular, extremely successful, maybe even influential, that I just either did not like, or I'll completely admit there are some shows that you'll probably see that I hardly even watched, that are considered some of the greatest shows in history that I tried to watch, and I just couldn't get into them, So yeah, I mean, I can't make it. I don't think we should make it, just a favorite list, because then, that really wouldn't be, that would be a completely different podcast, I would think.
But Steve does make a great point. I mean, the concept of this very program is let's give thanks to the stuff that we really enjoyed. So I think, but here's the beauty part. The way I looked at it, the way you looked at it, the way Steve looked at it, when you mashed it together, it's one heck of a comprehensive list, and I'm really happy with it. Why don't you start along with your number 100 to 91, and we'll get started on the rankings.
Okay. At number 100 for me, I'm gonna start off with The Love Boat. Number 99, I'm going with Growing Pains, the 80s sitcom with Kirk Cameron. Number 98, Dynasty, which was big in its day with John Forsythe, Linda Evans, and so on. Number 97 is 21 Jump Street, which some people might not remember that well, but it was a fun cop show with Johnny Depp in the late 80s. Number 96, the sitcom Perfect Strangers with Bronson Pinchot and Mark Lynn Baker, which I would say that is one of the ones that one of my favorites that I don't think ever got the credit it deserves. So that one did make my top 100. Number 95, Murder, She Wrote with Angela Lansbury. Number 94, Hunter with the former defensive end of the NFL, Fred Dreyer and Stephanie Kramer. Number 93 is The A-Team. Number 92, Miami Vice. And number 91, Moonlighting with Bruce Willis and Sybil Shepherd from the 80s.
They all made their mark. Okay, Steve-O.
And I say on his list there, I think Miami Vice actually probably could even go a lot higher just because it was really well regarded for its cinematography and was really kind of the first show from the 80s. It was like MTV meets a cop show, and it was very revolutionary at the time. So on my list, I have at number 100, I Dream of Jeannie, which actually debuted in 1965 and was kind of NBC's answer to Bewitched, which had debuted a year earlier, was a massive hit. At number 99, Dark Shadows, which was an incredible TV show of its day. It was the most marketed TV show of that era. It had two board games. It had 2 feature films. It was the most marketed TV show of its time. At number 98, I have Tomorrow with Tom Snyder, which is a very great late night show. At 97, I have Chris Elliott's Fox series, Get a Life, which of all the adult paperboys living in someone's basement, this was the top show of that genre. Number 96, Family Affair, a classic series from the 60s. Number 95, one of my all-time favorites, Lost in Space. Number 95, the very popular Gilligan's Island. Number 93, The Brady Bunch, a classic show which was even more popular in reruns. Number 92, The Partridge Family with David Cassidy, which was a phenomenon in its time. Number 91, the very forgotten Dream On, which was an HBO series with Brian Benben, where they showed clips from old movies, black and white movies, that would supposed to show you his thought process during a sitcom episode. It was a very interesting show.
Okay, I can predict right now that Steve is going to rip my list asunder. There'll be nothing left but flying debris by the time I get done. But anyway,
let's hear this list.
Now, look, I'm going to show my age with my list, guys. So be gentle with me, will you? Number 100, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, or also known as the Alfred Hitchcock Hour, the gothic, different theme every week show. Good evening, right? Alfred at the beginning. And I loved it as a child, even though it was kind of adult fare. And I find myself watching it even now. By the way, a lot of the shows that seem obscure, I can tell you where to find on streaming. Most of the stuff is available streaming. The old stuff is.
Well, I've got to add, the greatest episode of Alfred Hitchcock Presents is the one that starred Barbara Bill Geddes of Dallas, where 2 cops are investigating the death of her husband, and she's serving the murder weapon, which was a frozen leg of lamb. So that was a classic episode.
All right, number 99, and you guys will think this is too low. Get Smart.
Too low.
Buck Henry. Okay, Steve's going to rip me up. It's a Buck Henry and Mel Brooks. You can't go wrong. Remember now, you're good if you got it on the list, right? I mean, come on.
Absolutely.
Now. Number 3, 2020, which was ABC's attempt to be a 60 Minutes on their network on a Friday night, and it worked. Barbara Walters, and I can't remember. Oh, and Hugh Downs. Number 97, My Three Sons. Oh, come on, William Demarest and William Frawley. Come on, it's too good. Too good. Fred McMurray. Number 96 won the Emmy Award for Best Western Series in 1955. a show called Stories of the Century, starring Jim Davis, who decades later would be on Dallas as Matt Clark, railroad detective. It is a violent 30-minute movie every week. The show is really, really good. It's in public domain. You can type it in your browser and find every episode everywhere. It's not a bad show. And I include it there because, well, a lot of other Westerns took after that show. Number 94, a show I personally despise, Batman. Number 93, Good Times. Number 92, The Ren and Stimpy Show, you idiot. And number 91, I liked variety shows, and I liked the Hollywood Palace on ABC, a different host every week, along with jugglers, the Fifth Dimension, and comedian John Biner, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And there's my first 10.
And Bob, I just wanted to add, you missed it, number 95, The Monkees, The Incredible The Monkees.
Oh, I missed number 95. Okay, 95, The Monkees. I'm sorry. The Incredible Monkees. The cultural phenomenon that lasted all of about 24 months. Would you
I just want to point out
they couldn't sell a record after the first season. They were done after 1 year in terms of mega. It was Batman and the Monkees were the two biggest flashes of the Pan series of all time. I think they were number one. People got tired of them real fast. Joe, you were saying?
Just a couple of comments about both your lists. Your first your lists. Steve, Get a Life. I'm so annoyed that I didn't put that on my list because
Thank you.
I completely forgot about that show, and that's one of my all-time favorite. It's such a forgotten show.
It's hilarious.
And it's so good, and not enough people saw that show. But Chris Elliott was a comic genius on that show. So funny. And I believe was it Brian Doyle or was the his co-star?
Right, that's right.
Yeah. Which was great. And Bob, I definitely, when you mentioned Alfred Hitchcock Presents, that one also doesn't get enough love because that it kind of like gets forgotten about, I guess, in a way because of the Twilight Zone, because the Twilight Zone is considered like the great anthology horror sci-fi show.
Right.
But Alfred Hitchcock Presents was a great show. They just I don't know if you had said that where they stream it, but
yeah, I think it's still on Me TV.
It is
11 o'clock every night, I believe. I could be wrong, but I think it's on one of those type of. There's so many of those now. There's Get TV. There's
Catchy.
There's Catch. Yeah, there's so many that I can't keep track of them. There's so many. There's more than those than there are regular broadcast things.
Yeah.
But you can find. You know what? Like I said, for all these things, type the name of the show in your browser and you'll find it.
Yes, sir. Okay, number 90, Magnum P.I., the great cop show with Tom Selleck. Number 89, St. Elsewhere, another 80s show. Was on about 6 or 7 seasons, actually. Number 88, Benson. Number 87, Family Ties, which obviously launched the career of Michael J. Fox back then. Number 86, Soap, which, as we remember, was basically a parody of soap operas, a very quirky show back in the day. Number 85 is another one of those forgotten about TV shows, Quantum Leap, which was really, really creative, really smart with Scott Bakula back in 1989. Number 84, Sanford and Son. Number 83, The Brady Bunch, iconic, and it's still loved by kids growing up today. Number 82, Good Times. And number 81, one of the, a pretty crash show, but a great show, in at least the first few seasons nonetheless, Married with Children, which, believe it or not, was on 11 seasons.
Yeah, it was on a long time.
Yeah, which again, I think it was one of those shows that the first 3, 4, 5 seasons were really great, and I felt like it started declining in the later years. It sort of became more of a caricature of itself. It was sort of a parody, but those first few years were excellent.
Okie doke. Steve-O?
Number 90, I have Welcome Back, Kotter. Number 89, I have The Rifleman with Chuck Connors.
Nice choice. That's
yeah,
great.
that's a beloved old time show. Number 88, My So-Called Life, which was a popular show in the 90s. Number 87, Twin Peaks, which had a real cult following. Number 86, Steve McQueen debuted with Wanted Dead or Alive. Number 85, Kojak, a very popular long-running series. Number 84, where Clint Eastwood got his start, Rawhide. Number 83, a very popular soap opera for the teenage set, Beverly Hills 90210. Number 82, the aforementioned My Three Sons, which is one of my favorite sitcoms of all time, family sitcoms. Number 81, The Monkees, which was extremely popular, like Bob said, for a very short period of time. And then number 80, or number 80, well, that was my number 81, was The Monkees. I'm sorry.
Okay. Excellent job. Now, here's one you guys may find controversial at number 90, The Dick Cavett Show. Now you're going, why? Just another talk show. Do you realize that for probably somewhere between 3 to 5 seasons, he was on in prime time on ABC? And where else were you going to see Muhammad Ali, Norman Mailer, and Twiggy?
All in the same show.
Right, probably, yeah. So I thought it was a very fascinating, he's a fascinating guy, and I thought it was an excellent show. And it is, it's iconic.
In retrospect, I wish I had put it on my list, honestly.
But you know what? There's 1,000 TV shows. That's the problem. Literally 1,000. You can't get them all on. Number 89, another forgotten classic, The Many Faces of Dobie Gillis, with Bob Denver in his first television role. And it's a fondly remembered show. Number 88, Marcus Walby, MD, Robert Young with the stethoscope. Number 87, The Untouchables, Robert Stack with a gun. Number 86, Baywatch, Pamela Anderson with her guns. Number 85, The Ed Sullivan Show. Come on. Probably the ultimate primetime variety hour in terms of straight variety without like Carol Burnett, who was the focal point. Just one actor of the spinning plates guy and Topo Gigio, man. You can't beat it.
I'm surprised that's so high.
Well, just for the episode with the Beatles, it has to be on the list.
Yeah.
Number 84 is Taxi, beloved show. Number 83, Bewitched, which, by the way, in case anybody was wondering, if anybody wondered why Dick York left the show, he was ill. He had a serious back injury that he suffered in 1959 on the set of a film, and it caused him problems the rest of his life. And he had to leave. He could no longer stand up. So they replaced him with Dick Sargent. That's the reason why there's 2 Darrens on Bewitched. Number 82, Joe, you had a similar name for this, but I'm going to refer to it all as the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner Hour. If you didn't grow up watching that show and you're listening to this show, who are you? And number 81, In Living Color, Jim Carrey, and probably the most unique primetime sketch comedy show ever.
Good call.
That's a good one. Yeah, I want to give a shout out to in the previous list, Twin Peaks, another one that I feel like was such a cult classic that I think Steve, you had it on your prior 10.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Such a good show. It sort of lost its way a little bit after that first year, but really, really good. Really nothing like it, at least at that time. Okay, so number 80, I know that this is the Outdated Entertainment Hour, but nonetheless, my number 80 is Saturday Night's Main Event. In the world of wrestling, that show at the time, it started in 1985. It was a replacement for Saturday Night Live every 6 weeks or so. And there were a few years where that show was even higher rated, I believe, than Saturday Night Live. And it was revolutionary. I mean, that show got such monster ratings. And as a kid, there was nothing better than waiting for that every few months. Number 79 is The Dukes of Hazzard, The Good Old Boys with John Schneider and Tom Wopat. Number 78 is Mission Impossible. Number 77 is a show that was already mentioned twice, My Three Sons with the legendary Fred McMurray. Number 76, another show we've spoke about, Alfred Hitchcock Presents. Number 75, Make Room for Daddy with the great Danny Thomas.
Good one.
Number 74, Charlie's Angels. Number 73, some people might think this might be a little too high up there, but Monty Python's Flying Circus, which I only discovered many years later, but it was really a great British sketch comedy show that started in the late 60s. Number 72, the great Jack Lord show, Hawaii Five-0. And number 71, Bewitched.
Monty Python's not too high.
I think Monty Python, I think, in some people's list would probably be in the top 25. So you did good.
Maybe top 10 for some people.
Yeah, absolutely.
I own the box set and I'm wearing it out. That's all I know.
Yeah.
The DVD box set, I have it. Oh, of course, it is on Netflix, by the way.
Okay.
The
Yeah,
entire original series, including scenes that were cut out of the DVD box set. Even there's some reason there's cutting room floor scenes that are included in the Netflix version. I don't know how that happened, but you'll see stuff you never saw before there.
yeah, I need to watch more of those. Like I said, I got into that later on. It's maybe about 15, 20 years ago. But from what I saw, I really love. But that's one of those shows I really need to just dive into and just watch the old stuff.
It holds up. It really does. It's. I love that show. It's one of my all-time favorites. Steve, how about 10 more of your all-time favorites?
That sounds good. Number 80, I'm going back to 50s Westerns with Wagon Train. Number 79, Mork and Mindy, which helped Robin Williams explode onto the American culture. Number 78, I have South Park, which was really popular a few years ago. Number 77, Laverne and Shirley, which was extremely popular. Number 76, The Munsters, which was Howard Stern's favorite show growing up. Number 75, Have Gun Will Travel, which was one of the better of all the Westerns that came out in the 50s. Number 74, the very popular One Day at a Time with Valerie Bertinelli. Number 73, The Addams Family, which I always felt was a little bit better than The Munsters. Number 72, The Jackie Gleason Show, direct from Florida. This is the one that had all the skits, and it was not the one with the honeymooners, but it was a great show that was on Saturday night on CBS in the 70s and the 60s. And number 71, Dragnet, which, as Bob has told me, had various incarnations, but Jack Webb, of course, was always at the front of it.
Right. There's their 50s, and they returned in the late 60s. Two different Dragnet, one in black and white, the other in color, with Harry Morgan.
It's really weird that it's funny. Steve had both the Munsters and the Addams Family in this last top 10. And I've always thought it was funny that I hate both of those shows. And I love horror, as you know.
Yeah.
I love the horror genre, but for some reason, the comedic part of those shows, it just always put me off. So for some reason, I just could never get into them. Don't get me wrong. I know they're both very, very.
All right. So I'll go to Steve. Steve, which one would you choose? The Addams Family, the Munsters, if they were both on at the same time, which one would you watch?
Well, I think that they're both good, but I do like the Addams Family a lot better.
Me too.
And I will tell you this, especially you, Joe, since you're newer to these older shows. If you ever can find, and I'm sure you can look it up on Google, but yeah, the show was only on the air for 2 years and it was all in black and white. But there are some color pictures out there of that incredible set that they had, that crazy house they lived in. And if this show had been produced in color, I think this show would probably be still on the air today, because the color was just like unbelievable, like red and all these crazy colors, and it really enhanced the show even more. But maybe they'll colorize it someday. Who knows?
Interesting. Okay.
I think you're up, Bob.
Bob's up.
Okay. Number 80, L.A. Law. Number 79, the aforementioned Miami Vice. Number 78, the documentary about my sex life, The Walking Dead. Wait a minute. There was another one? Oh.
This is a zombie show.
Oh, same difference. That's right. It's everybody at The Walking Dead. Number 77, one of the indelible characters in TV, Peter Falk as Columbo. Number 76, one of the indelible characters on TV, Frasier. Number 75, you couldn't catch me on a bet watching this show, but my family watched it religiously every Thursday night at 8. I think it was The Waltons, which was a huge hit. I mean, it was a massive hit. 74, one of the funniest of Paul Henning's country-laden comedy shows, Green Acres. I mean, come on, Arnold the Pig, please. 73, I'm not saying anything about The Man, but The Cosby Show, when it was on, was an iconic program. 72, Dragnet. I listed it as both the 60s and 70s, or excuse me, it's just the 60s, 70s version, but it's cool if you counted it both ways, that's fine. And number 71, in the early days of television, this show sold televisions more than any show in the history of the medium. Texaco Star Theater, later known as the Milton Berle Show. Ask any really old person. Uncle Milty made people go out and buy TVs. Everybody loved Milton Berle in the late 40s, early 50s, and it's one of the most iconic shows of all time, and it had to be on my list anyway.
Good call on that.
Had to be. I mean, you could read books about it. People were standing in line to buy Philco TVs. It was amazing. All right, Joe, from 70 onward, please.
Yes, sir. I'll just make a quick comment about one of the shows on your list, The Waltons. It is on my list later on, but it's funny you said about, parents or whatever. It's one of my parents' favorite shows. I also do not like it. And it's kind of funny. I always feel like growing up that was the show your parents watched,
Right.
to this day, my parents watch it on whatever it is, Me TV or Catchy Comedy, whatever the channel is. You go over their house and you look at their DVR, and they probably have about 30 episodes of The Waltons on there. So it's kind of funny how that lasted for them.
Either the Matlock, right?
And Matlock, exactly. Okay. Number 70 is a show that I don't believe got mentioned yet, Leave It to Beaver, which, it gets made fun of. I guess it's a little dated if you look at it now, but I thought in the early years, I thought Jerry Mathers was just fantastic in that role. Obviously, it got a little weird when he got older. It's a favorite of mine. Number 69, Laverne and Shirley. Number 68, I had Looney Tunes, which is basically meant to be Bugs Bunny, Porky Pig, the Roadrunner, which you were talking about earlier. Number 67 is probably one of my all-time favorite classic cartoons, The Tom and Jerry Show. Number 66, Kojak, with the great Telly Savalas. Number 65, it's funny you just mentioned this, Bob, but Matlock with Andy Griffith. Number 64 is Night Court. Number 63, another guilty pleasure, so to speak, is Three's Company with the great John Ritter, which I really don't think you can ever talk enough about what a great physical comic John Ritter was, especially
he was.
on that show.
Yeah, he was.
I think it gets a little bit, it was obviously a kind of a wacky comedy, and maybe the writing wasn't the greatest, but I mean, for that time, that was just an incredibly, incredibly funny show.
Did you ever see John Ritter in Bad Santa? Oh my God,
yes,
would be funny.
Yes.
Holy smokes. What underrated comedic actor.
Underrated.
I'm sorry he passed away as young as he did. That was terrible.
Absolutely. 62 is a show that I know you said, or actually another one of the great nighttime dramas, Dallas. And of course, how can you ever forget about Who Shot JR, one of the most popular cliffhangers of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And number 61 is The Oprah Winfrey Show, which was really the highest rated daytime talk show in American history.
Mm-hmm.
It was on for 25 seasons. So it can't be stated enough just how revolutionary that show was, and Oprah is to this day.
A good call on that, Joe. That was one that needed to be mentioned for sure. All right. So for number 70, a very popular show. It was never one of my favorites, but the Wild Wild West had one of the best TV themes of all time. And it was a very popular show. Number 69, The Cosby Show. Like Bob, I listed it because it was extremely popular in the mid-'80s. But the show where he played Chet Kincaid, the school phys ed coach, was a lot better on it, to be honest with you.
I agree. And that's my favorite TV theme of all time, the original Bill Cosby Show.
Yeah, I think
Reason Madison.
That was a great
day. Long as I'm away. Oh, God, please. Anytime. Every day I'll listen to that song. And by the way, that was a Quincy Jones production, that song.
Oh, there you go.
Little trick.
And in number 68, this is something that Bob and I had talked about briefly earlier off the air, the classic Batman from 1966. Now, Bob apparently doesn't like this show, but in my eyes, the show works on multiple levels. As a kid, you can just watch it as a straight-out action adventure with the straightest Batman and the straightest Robin you're ever going to see, and all the greatest supervillains in the world. Or as an adult, you can watch it as a comedy and just laugh at how inept Commissioner Gordon is and how lazy they are. And it's one hell of a show. I mean, the casting on that show is incredible. Number 67, Green Acres, like Bob said, they're probably the best of the rural sitcoms, just as far as the laughs. Number 66, Star Trek The Next Generation, which reinvented the wheel, and it made another Star Trek popular, and that led to more Star Treks after that. Number 65 was The Defenders, a very popular legal show in the mid-'60s. 64, Perry Mason. 63, Laugh-In. 62, Northern Exposure, which was a really quirky show of its time, kind of part drama and comedy. And then number 61, The Waltons. And that was a well done show. I mean, it was I guess if you told your friends in school that you watched The Waltons, they would probably think you were a geek, but it was a very well done show and a very heartwarming show.
Oh, there you go.
But Steve, I just want to say, as far as as far as Batman goes, between Bob and you, Steve, I'm sorry, Bob, but I'm Team Batman.
Okay, fine.
I loved Adam
Fine.
West.
Yeah.
I love him, and to me, Adam West will always be Batman.
Well, it wasn't all bad. I mean, Julie Newmar, come on.
Oh
Yeah,
my
right.
God.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. I got a couple of wacky ones here. Number 70, Bonanza. What is it? By the way, was that the greatest opening? The burning map at the beginning. Come on now, boing, right?
Well, just based on its longevity, it's got to be on the list.
Absolutely. Yeah. Number 69. Imagine being as old as Red Fox and having your best part of your career was Sanford and Son after all those years of doing party records and being kind of an obscure stand-up. Think about that. What was he, in the 70s when he hit it big? Crazy, man. Number 68, the original Bob Newhart Show.
Classic.
Number 67, the Mary Tyler Moore Show. Actually, it was just called Mary Tyler Moore, really. I have all these shows. We have Andy Griffith next, which my parents use as a primer for how to raise us, The boy needs a beating. All right. Now, hear me out on this next one. Next to 65, Hee Haw. Now, you guys I could feel the skin crawling up your backs, but I give you this. That show debuted on CBS, I believe, as a summer replacement show. I could be wrong. All right. A massive hit out of the box. It lasted several seasons on CBS, then moved to syndication where it lasted like another decade and a half. If that doesn't belong on a list of all-time TV shows, I can't. Whether you liked it or not, whether it was corny or not, which it was, but Waylon Jennings was on that show.
And I think it was on another 30 years in syndication.
Yes, it never ended. And everybody loved the girls on the porch. So come on, guys, you watch it just for come on.
My dad loved that show.
There you go.
He used to watch it all the time. Yeah, I didn't really watch it much, but yeah, he loved it for sure.
Now 64 is a show I didn't particularly like, Happy Days, which is weird because I liked The Odd Couple. That was the same production team, but Happy Days got too, I don't know. Well, it jumped the shark, as we all know. Number 63, The Muppet Show. Taking the Sesame Street characters and new characters and putting them in primetime and making it work. And syndication, by the way, it was a syndicated show. It was just a good show, a good, solid half hour that everybody could laugh at. Number 62, I've got The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, which is iconic already. And when he came back, the show quadrupled its ratings recently. Now, here's number 61, and this is the pick I'm most proud of. And I will admit this, I had Dallas on my list twice, and Steve pointed it out. I needed a replacement, and when I thought about it, this was perfect for that spot. And you guys would go, "Oh yeah," when I say it. ABC's Wide World of Sports.
Yeah, good call.
That's a good one. Yeah,
the thrill of victory, the agony and defeat, iconic. The whole show, different array of sports on every episode, and the whole country watched it.
Wild World of Sports is a good one. I mean, I admit that one. It just did not even come into my memory when I was creating this list.
It hasn't been on for a long, long time. Steve, you ever watch that?
Oh, all the time. Every Saturday it was on at one point or another.
Hey, it could have been worse. I could have picked the Pro Bowlers Tour. So, come on, guys. Mr. Joe Puccio, you're up with number 60.
Okay, number 60, The Muppet Show, the great Jim Henson. Number 59 is one that hasn't gotten mentioned yet, but Roseanne, which was on for 10 seasons, believe it or not. Another show that I feel like it sort of went down in quality over the years, but the first several seasons were very good. Number 58, one of my all-time favorite animated shows, Scooby-Doo, which is still loved by kids growing up today. Number 57, Alice. Number 56 is a show that I have never seen a single episode of, but I felt it had to be on the list, Murphy Brown. Number 55, here we go, The Waltons, again on the list. Number 54, Doctor Who. which was really influential. It's one of the shows I remember watching as a kid. One of the shows that was sort of like a gateway horror show in some ways. It's not a horror show, but it's very, sci-fi, and it has a rabid fan base. And I just want to say Tom Baker will always be my favorite Doctor Who. Number 53, General Hospital, which was the longest running soap opera that I think is still in production from 1963 on. Number 52, Perry Mason with Raymond Burr. And number 51, The Adventures of Superman with George Reeves, which is a show that my dad, actually both my parents got me into as a kid, because obviously you're a young boy and you want to, you're into superheroes and things like that. And they told me, they said, look, there's this original Superman show, and it was on TV at the time, and they had me watch it. And I loved it. I think it's simple. It's a great show, and much like I love Adam West, as Batman, I love George Reeves as Superman.
I love that show. I used to watch it in reruns in the afternoon. They used to show it like 40 afternoon in my market.
Yeah.
That was a great show.
And it's funny too that in retrospect, they didn't have any super villains on there. They were just like petty crooks.
Right. It's true.
Right. All right, Steve.
All right, number 60. This is a big ABC hit in the mid 60s. Combat with Vic Morrow. Number 59 was Playhouse 90, which some of the great screenwriters like Patty Chayefsky and Rod Serling, who would go on to do The Twilight Zone, they wrote a lot of these live TV dramas that were performed live, and it's still renowned for its history-making shows. Number 58, the Mystery Science Theater 3000, which was a really campy show where a guy and two robots would watch old grade Z movies and talk over them. 57, Sex and the City, which was very popular on HBO. 56, Frasier. 55, Family with Matthew Broderick's father, James Broderick, and Christy McNichol, which was a huge hit in the late 70s. 54, Will and Grace, which was one of the best sitcoms in the 90s. Number 53, the classic You Bet Your Life with Groucho, which is essentially a game show with Groucho, but it was even rerunning in New York in the 90s, and we would stay up late at night, maybe 3 a.m., and watch Groucho on this talk show. It was hilarious. And 52, The Golden Girls, and 51, in the late 90s, Ally McBeal was a great comedy/drama.
Alec McBeal was really popular too. That one was a rating smash for Fox, I believe.
It was, yeah. It was on Monday nights, right before the wrestling would come on another network.
That's how you know, right? All right, 60, the first African American to have a hit variety show, The Flip Wilson Show. Number 59, The Dick Van Dyke Show, which is iconic. 58, The X-Files. 57, Married with Children, we talked about before. 56, Modern Family. 55, ER. 54, Jeopardy. 53, Lost. 52, Hill Street Blues. And 51, the aforementioned Twin Peaks, which I personally wasn't all that fond of, but it was a cultural icon, and people liked it, loved it, if you remember those days, right?
Yeah. Number 50, I'm going to go to a show that hasn't been mentioned yet, the old Match Game Show with Gene Rayburn, who to this day is one of my favorite game show hosts. The double entendres on that show, the chemistry on the panels with Betty White and Charles Nelson Riley and all these people was so great. And that's another show that I only found out about maybe five or so years ago, and on some of these game show networks, and I'm obsessed with it. I love it at night. If it's on, I'll throw it on, and let's just say you can't get away with that show nowadays if it was on. But great show. Number 49, Hill Street Blues. Number 48, Family Guy, which I feel is like pretty much the best adult-oriented animated show ever, which is still on today, from Seth MacFarlane. Number 47, 2020, the news magazine show, which, believe it or not, has been on for 46 seasons. It started in 1978. Number 46, Get Smart. Number 45, The Beverly Hillbillies. Number 44, Candid Camera. Number 43 is, I agree with you, Bob, a show that I don't care for, but it definitely belonged to me on the list, Happy Days. Number 42, the old Jack Benny show, which actually one of the oldest because that started on radio in the 1930s. But definitely a classic show. It was the 30s through the 50s. And number 41, a show that I believe might have been Steve who mentioned earlier, The Golden Girls, which for a time, that was such a hot show. I mean, those 4 actresses were perfect. And it was so rare for a series to have 4 women of that age on a show and leading that show. And what can you say about the chemistry on that show? I mean, it was fantastic. Really just a laugh out loud, funny show.
I read somewhere that to this day, college women love the Golden Girls.
I'm not surprised.
It's still a major hit on campuses. I just read that recently too. And I was shocked to find that out. And by the way, Candid Camera is a great pick that I admitted. That's an iconic show. That's really the first Jackass, really, when you think about it.
That show had over 1,000 episodes. It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Steve? The guy who knows more about more things than I know, Steve Gennarelli, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go.
Number 50, I've got Hogan's Heroes, which was an incredible premise for a show. Hey, let's do a fun-loving sitcom in a Nazi prison camp. But they somehow made it work. Number 49, Ironside, which was Raymond Burr post Perry Mason, but a very interesting show, very well done. As Joe just mentioned, 48, the Jack Benny program. That to me, that show holds up today. I think Curb Your Enthusiasm would probably be the modern day equivalent of Jack Benny program, but they're both really, really good programs. 47, I put Your Show of Shows, which in the 50s was kind of their version of Saturday Night Live. Number 46, I put The X-Files, which was a huge cult program, a very popular program. 45, Columbo, which was popular not just in the 70s, but popular again in the 90s when they brought it back. 44, I put Mission Impossible, which debuted in 1966, which I think was one of the best years of TV, with a lot of the iconic shows debuting that year, and it had a great run into the mid-70s. 43, Miami Vice, which we all mentioned earlier, very popular. 42, Dallas, which I was a huge Dallas fan, would watch it every Friday night at 9, loved Dallas. And 41, LA Law, which Bob mentioned earlier, was one of the best shows, legal shows that combine a lot of humor with drama as well.
My number 50 is Friends. My 49 is Game of Thrones, which as you get older, I'm part of that cast, Game of Thrones. Number 48, The Golden Girls. Number 47, the aforementioned Oprah. I believe the name of the show was just Oprah, if I'm not mistaken, as opposed to The Show or whatever. 46 is Cheers. 45 is Star Trek. 44 is Mary Tyler Moore. 43, NYPD Blue. 42, The Fugitive. The final episode of The Fugitive at that point was one of the highest rated TV shows ever broadcast because they found the one-armed bandit or something who was the real the real guy behind the crime. And 41, Carol Burnett.
Okay. 2 very quick comments here. Friends, just want to say I've never seen a single episode.
Wow, congratulations, because I've seen 2.
I always like to bring that up when people, when I'm with friends or people, we that inevitably becomes part of the conversation. And it's almost like a, it's, I don't know why I feel good about this, which I really shouldn't, but I'm like, I've never seen an episode of that. And at this point, I'm at a point in my life where I feel like I've gone this long without watching it, and I probably never will, which my wife, though, wants us to start watching it together. She's never really seen it either. Yeah, and Cheers, I just want to say, Bob, I think that's way too high. I think that one definitely belongs lower. I think it's one of the greatest sitcoms ever, but obviously we'll get to that when I
actually
get to
mean higher.
Higher, yes. There you go.
All right, where are we here?
Okay, I believe I'm at bat here with number 40. My number 40 is Father Knows Best from the 1950s. Number 39, CBS News Sunday Morning, which has been on a whopping 40 seasons. And to this day, it's still going strong, and it's still a show that my wife DVRs every weekend, and we catch it, whenever we have time.
Well, that's a
Uh,
good call because I'd say that could arguably be said as the best show on TV, honestly.
Hey, they had the Stones on last week,
exactly.
and they get A-list everybody on that show.
It's very, very well done. Yeah,
It
to
is.
this
It
day.
really is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
My number 38 would be Gunsmoke. Number 37 is The Jeffersons, which I still watch today. It's replayed on some of those old channels. It's one of those laugh out loud, funny shows. Sherman Hemsley and Isabel Sanford had great chemistry. Number 36, Maude, which was actually the first spinoff of All in the Family. Number 35, Columbo with Peter Falk. Number 34, Barney Miller. Number 33, The Dick Van Dyke Show. Number 32, we already mentioned Batman with Adam West. And number 31 is one of these shows that I feel had one of the best ensemble casts ever in the sitcom world, which was Taxi. You're talking Judd Hirsch, Jeff Conway, Danny DeVito, Mary Lou Henner, Tony Danza, Andy Kaufman, Christopher Lloyd, Carol Kane. It just goes on and on. One of my all-time favorite sitcoms, and I feel like that one doesn't get talked enough about these days.
Good call. Number 40, I have Get Smart, which I think is probably the best of the fantasy sitcoms of the 60s. Number 39, the very beloved Carol Burnett Show. Number 38, NYPD Blue. Number 37, the aforementioned Happy Days. Number 36, In Living Color, which is very popular. Number 35, Hill Street Blues with Daniel Travanti. Number 34, Barney Miller, which some cops have said is a better cop show than any of the other ones on the air. Number 33, The Rockford Files, which David Chase, the creator of The Sopranos, actually wrote for back in the 70s. Number 32, the classic Late Night with David Letterman, John McAdam's favorite show of all time, I imagine. And number 31, The Simpsons.
Nice. Okay. We'll stay animated. Number 40, South Park. The debut South Park show is one of the funniest things I have ever seen on television. Just the first show. The crudely animated first show was just so funny. Now, 39. You got to put a soap opera or two on your list. And I have General Hospital. The thing's been on forever and it's iconic. And, you know, soap operas seem to be going the way of the dodo, but they really had their mark. And here's another show that you got to be old to know this one. Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color, every Sunday night on NBC. Now, that went through a few name changes, but the Walt Disney Show was on for ages and ages. But I remember it best as Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color. Why they call it that? Because color TVs, not everybody had, and it inspired a lot of people to go out and buy a color TV set. And speaking of that era, number 37, Lassie. Kids used to cry on the closing credits of Lassie. They used to do this whistling ending theme. You saw Lassie just sitting there, and the song sounded sad. Steve, you remember Lassie? You remember Lassie's Fade Out song?
I do. It did make you feel very melancholy as a small child.
It's like Lassie's going away. When you're 4, that's hard to take. You have to hear the ending theme to Lassie if you've never heard it. It's just, when you're a little kid, it sounded like Lassie ran away or something. It got to all of us. I've yet to meet the adult my age who didn't cry at the end of Lassie. All right. Number 36, ER. We'll go back to the early days again. Number 35. It's the Huntley Brinkley Report.
Oh, my goodness.
NBC News. I don't know why I have that there because I don't have Walter Cronkite, but that's just the way it worked out. 34 is Survivor. 33 is Dallas. 32 is Sex and the City. 31 is the cult favorite Mad Men, which, made not streaming, but cable. One of the big cable series.
I'm gonna add to that if this list, I wanted to make this list an outdated list, and I felt Mad Men was too current. But Mad Men, if I would just put any show on the list, would probably be in the top 3.
Wow. In the top 3, really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a recommendation. All right, Joe, get me out of this, will you?
All righty, I'll try. Number 30, American Bandstand with Dick
Nice.
Clark.
Good thought.
That one, I mean, you realize how long that show was on. I think it started in like 1952 or 1953 or somewhere around there. Number 29, Our Gang. Still a fun show to watch. So many memorable characters. The Little Rascal, Spanky, Buckwheat, Alfalfa.
That was the one choice I almost disqualified because technically those were theatrical shorts that they threw on television. It wasn't made as a TV series. However, I said, you know what? We all watched The Little Rascals growing up, so I let that one ride. And I love them too.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it, we still watch them.
Absolutely.
We still watch them. We
Yeah,
really do.
yeah. Number 28, The Andy Griffith Show. Number 27 is a show that hasn't gotten mentioned yet, and this is one of my all-time favorite shows, Little House on the Prairie. It's still showing on reruns, and I want to give a shout out to Michael Landon because Landon was so underrated. Doesn't get a lot of credit nowadays, but that show was on for 9 seasons. As we all know, it was based on the Laura Ingalls Wilder's books. You know, we always, my wife and I talk about this, that it's surprising that it didn't get any Emmys or a lot of Emmys back then because it was really well acted. The characters, a lot of character actors on that show. Ernest Borgnine comes to mind, was great in a couple of roles. So I definitely want to give a shout out to that show, one of my all-time favorites. Number 26, The Carol Burnett Show. Number 25 is The Odd Couple. And I know some people might think that might be a little high, but you know, it definitely deserves to be on there. A show that I also didn't watch that much, but I got into a little bit in later years. Number 24, The Flintstones, which was the first animated series in prime time on ABC in the 1960s. Number 23, Bonanza with Lauren Green. Number 22, The Ed Sullivan Show. Ed Sullivan, obviously the pioneer who we spoke about earlier. And number 21 is Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, which Fred Rogers, you know, is just an icon in children's television and really just every kid. I mean, do you know any kid that didn't watch that show growing up? I mean, it really gave you a sense of comfort.
Only the ones that couldn't get PBS, right?
Yeah, that's true.
PBS was not on every market, but the markets that did have it. You're right. He was like Captain Kangaroo or anybody else, just iconic.
Yeah, that was such a good show. In retrospect, I wish I put Kukla, Fran, and Ollie on my list. As that was another good show for kids. But, I think I'm up next. So my number 30 was HBO's The Larry Sanders Show, which was remarkable at the time, great entertainment. I have Taxi at number 29, which was already mentioned. Bewitched at number 28, which had an incredibly long run. Even a longer run at 27 with Bonanza. Number 26, The Beverly Hillbillies, which some of their episodes were among the highest rated episodes of any regular show for a long, long time. Number 25, The Ed Sullivan Show, which is very iconic. Number 24, Friends. Number 23, The Jeffersons. Number 22, Law and Order, which has been on for probably 37 years. And number 21, 60 Minutes, which has been on for over 50 years now.
Mm-hmm. Sure it has. All right, 30, Breaking Bad. Now, 29, I have to explain. It was a 2-year-long PBS series called The Great American Dream Machine, which led to the Groove Tube, which led to Saturday Night Live. Ken Shapiro was on it, Chevy Chase, Carl Gottlieb, Pete. Where else are you going to hear Pete Singer singing a song about the tale of Abraham and Isaac from the Bible? It was a satirical series, basically, but they also had human interest stories and some newsworthy things on the show. I never saw another show like The Great American Dream Machine. It kept in my head all these years later, and I had to put it on. It was critically lauded, but, you know, PBS being PBS, it only went for 2 years. It's still available. You can still find it out there in the great ether somewhere.
Interesting.
29, The Great American Dream Machine, PBS. 28, Playhouse 90, a different drama every week on CBS. 27, one of my favorite shows of all time, Barney Miller. 26, Late Night with David Letterman. 25, The Simpsons. 24, another one of my favorite shows of all time, SCTV. From Eugene Levy to Tony Rosato, I loved every cast. They were a daring, bold show. John Candy, of course, one of my all-time favorites. 23, You Bet Your Life with Groucho Marx. 22, the Jack Benny program. You guys beat me to the punch on that one. I totally agreed. Joe, like you said, it was the segue from the radio days to TV. And 21, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, just like you mentioned as well.
Okay. We're down to the top 20 now. So my number 20 is going to be 60 Minutes, which we've talked about already. Over 2,500 episodes of that show, still going strong today. Mike Wallace, Harry Reasoner, so can't be stated enough, that show. Number 19 is the Phil Donahue Show. Obviously, Phil Donahue just passed away recently, and I've always felt that he was the standard bearer for daytime talk shows. There would be no Oprah without Phil Donahue, and I would say, I might be, or you can argue with this, but I think that Phil was bigger than Oprah at both of their heights. There was a period where Phil Donahue was just so big, took so many. He basically talked about so many things back in the day that weren't being talked about on daytime talk shows. Number 18, the original Star Trek. Number 17, Mary Tyler Moore Show. Number 16, The Wonder Years, which was a great coming-of-age comedy narrated by Daniel Stern with Fred Savage. Number 15, Late Night with David Letterman, which I feel was the greatest late-night talk show ever. Number 14, The Cosby Show, which we already talked about. Say what you will about the man, but there's no denying that show was so incredible back in its day. Number 13, The Bob Newhart Show. Number 12, MASH. And number 11, The Honeymooners, which is obviously one of the classic sitcoms of all time, but it's so crazy to think about that. I'm sure you're both aware that it was less than 40 episodes.
It was one season. What we're watching to this day is one season.
It's almost unbelievable to think about that was, how could it be one season when it still aired so much on reruns? But what I loved about that show, it was so simple, no frills, it was just Jackie Gleason, Audrey Meadows, Art Connie, Joyce Randolph. But I mean, just that chemistry they had. And it was in that same apartment, the whole show. But it's just, to this day, it's just one of the funniest shows ever.
Absolutely.
All right, number 20, as Bob had just said, SCTV is so miles ahead of everything else as far as comedy, and I wish it was streaming on some show. I'd love to see all the episodes again. As Joe just said, The Wonder Years at number 19, extremely well done show, one of the best sitcoms of all time. Number 18, the original Bob Newhart show, which was fantastic. Didn't really care for the 80s Newhart in Vermont. Number 17, the classic Saturday Night Live, which has been on since the mid-70s till today. Number 16, Sanford and Son, which was just a remarkably good sitcom in the mid-70s when there were tons of great sitcoms. This one was as good as any. Number 15, Gunsmoke, which was an extremely long-running series on CBS. And it gets on the list for its longevity. Number 14, The Dick Van Dyke Show, which was one of the all-time great sitcoms, one of the best ones of all time. Number 13, Mary Tyler Moore, which in my opinion is very comparable to The Dick Van Dyke Show. Number 12, The Tonight Show with either Jack Parr, Johnny Carson, or Steve Allen. Remarkably good, and it was just one of the most popular shows in the country in those days. And number 11, Cheers, which is, in my opinion, one of the best sitcoms of all time, and definitely the best one that came out of the 80s.
Number 20, The Odd Couple, my personal favorite sitcom of all time. You watch Jack Klugman and Tony Randall, and it didn't even seem scripted. It's almost like as they were fighting in the front room, you would swear you were just horning in on these guys. They were so natural together and remained, by the way, very close friends to the day they both died. They were huge friends in real life. 19, your show of shows. Carl Reiner, Imogene Koga, Sid Caesar. Mel Brooks is a writer. A lot of classic TV writers wrote for that show. It was the Saturday Night Live of its time. It was a definite precursor to that. Ask Lorne Michaels about it. He'll bring up your show of shows. I had to put it in my top 20. As I had to put in Ronan Martin's Laugh-In at number 18, which was like an orgy broke out in a church. On Monday nights, wasn't it the Waltons on Monday nights? And Here Comes Laugh-In or something really homey was on CBS, and Here Comes Laugh-In on NBC which was the parties and the girls in the bikinis with the body paint and the double entendre jokes. And it was a massive hit when it started. It does not hold up, but it's still worth checking out as a period piece. So because of its huge influence in kind of breaking down barriers on TV, I give it number 18. Number 17, Captain Kangaroo, for obvious reasons. Number 16, Monty Python's Flying Circus, for obvious reasons. Number 15, Law & Order, one of the longest living franchises in all of TV. Number 14, the Ernie Kovacs show's last season in 1961. Why? That led to Laugh-In. George Slaughter, the producer of Laugh-In, married one of the cast members of that last season of Ernie Kovacs' show. Ernie Kovacs died during the making of that final season of his show. It was the first show to feature silent sight gags, short sketches, just freeform like Monty Python picked up. Ask Chevy Chase, ask Monty Python, ask any of those other people who was a major influence on them, and they will all say Ernie Kovacs. In fact, I've seen Chevy Chase talking about Ernie Kovacs. If you haven't seen it, it's available on streaming all over the place. Try to get to that last season. It is phenomenal. It doesn't sound funny to hear classical music behind a kitchen. Check out the sketch. It is amazing. Just amazing. I'm telling you, amazing. It said it was made in the 50s, or actually 1961 at that point. Good gravy. It was innovative. Nothing else like it. 13 is Seinfeld, 12 MASH, 11 Gunsmoke. I better shut up.
Now, well, I'll just add to that. I think it was in the late 70s, PBS did like a Ernie Kovacs retrospective.
Yeah.
And we watched it every time it was on. We watched it again and again. This is before VCRs. It wasn't like we could tape it, but we would watch it all the time. And like Bob said, it was so good. It was incredibly good.
Yeah. Have you ever seen Ernie Kovacs, Joe?
I never watched it. No, I have to say.
Try to catch it. He had a lot. Here's the thing about Ernie. He had a series on every network, a series of syndication. They always bombed. Mm-hmm. He never really was a big rating success, but his influence on other television is enormous. Trust me. When you see it, you'll figure out why.
Okay.
I think Shout Factory owns the rights to those old shows, and they have all of them. But what you're looking for is the last thing, as well as a silent short called Eugene, a half-hour silent comedy in 1961. Phenomenal stuff. I mean, just so innovative, so strange. And that's what I like about it, too. The stuff was odd. And I can't say enough about Ernie Kovacs. One of my all-time favorites. All right, we're down to our top 10s. Joe, cut loose, baby. Let's see what you got for top 10.
Okay, my top 10. Number 10 is Cheers, which you've already talked about. I'll make one quick point about that show. The series finale, the most watched series finale at the time, I believe it was an estimated 93 million viewers. Almost 40% of the U.S. population were watching that finale at the time, which is almost unbelievable to think about nowadays. Number 9, Jeopardy, which really would have to be considered the smartest game show of all time. In some ways, it shouldn't even be considered a game show like others. And obviously created by Merv Griffin, such an original show, 40 seasons, 9,000 episodes. It started with Art Fleming, and then obviously everybody remembers Alex Trebek, which really it really took off with the late Alex Trebek. Number 8, Saturday Night Live, the most successful sketch comedy show ever. Number 7, The Simpsons, which, again, still going strong today. Over 30 Emmy Awards, so it can't be understated. Number 6 is Sesame Street, which would probably be considered the greatest and most watched children's TV show of all time. It was educational. It was important in the formative years for children, live action, sketch comedy, just so many Emmy Awards. In fact, I believe it was over 200 Emmy Awards, believe it or not. So that has to be in the top 10 for me. Number 5, Seinfeld. Simply put, I think it might be it's definitely one of the top 2 greatest sitcoms of all time. Top 2 or 3, I'll say, greatest sitcoms of all time. Number 4, The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, which I mentioned earlier. Obviously, David Letterman was on my list, and while I'm a bigger Letterman fan, I don't think you could ever get any better as far as influential than being than the Johnny Carson show. It was the quintessential American talk show. Top three. My number three is going. This was really hard to sort of, rank these last three. Number three, I'm going to go with the Twilight Zone. It just mixed fantasy, horror, drama, science fiction, comedy. Rod Serling is a genius. In fact, the phrase "the Twilight Zone" has entered into our vernacular. Now it's just such a fantastic show that doesn't matter how many times I watched those reruns. It never gets old when they do those marathons during the holidays, New Year's Day, and things like that. Number two, I'm gonna go with I Love Lucy. It was the first scripted television program to be filmed on 35 millimeters, in front of a live studio audience. A lot of people consider it the greatest show of all time. For me, it's going to hit number two. And my number one show of all time is going to have to be All in the Family, which I think today, it would be the best, not only the best sitcom, but possibly the best show of all time, created by Norman Lear. How many shows has he created? Just amazing, the amount of quality TV that he's put on the air. Carol O'Connor, Gene Stapleton, Rob Reiner, Sally Struthers might be the four best the four best people to ever be on a sitcom together. It dealt with so many issues that weren't dealt with at the time. Things like racism, anti-Semitism, infidelity, rape, religion, miscarriages. The list goes on and on. And to this day, it's one of those shows that, again, I will watch at night if I have nothing going on and it's on one of those late night MeTV channels or something like that. I'll put it on and I'll laugh like I had never seen it before. Definitely, like I said, it was really tough to pick those last few and kind of rank them because they're all so great. But I would say for me, that one sort of edges out the others. Definitely the number one TV show of all time.
All right. Number 10, I'll give it to I Love Lucy just for its iconic nature. I think Desi came up with the idea to film a show with multiple cameras. I mean, they were so far advanced what they were doing. And number 9, The Andy Griffith Show, which is just so iconic. And it's a show that people of multiple generations love to this day. And number 8, MASH, which was, probably the most popular show of its time in the late 70s, early 80s. All in the Family, which Joe just gave a great recap of. I mean, if I could only say, anything negative about it is watching it now, the shows hold up really well, but they are dated in the sense of they're talking about these very topical issues in the 70s, and the issues are still relevant today, but it's definitely a snapshot of a time. You're definitely going back to the 70s. 6, Seinfeld. Seinfeld has got to be one of the all-time great sitcoms. I have one that's ahead of it, but Seinfeld has a lot of episodes, and I think I have a great catalog of episodes, and it really holds up very well. Number 5, The Honeymooners, as you both have mentioned earlier. Just those classic episodes. 1 year's worth were enough to be replayed countless times. And I do notice a thread in my top 5 that my top 5 includes a lot of shows that were on WPAX out of New York back in the 80s and reruns. And these shows, a lot of them that are in my top 5 ran from 11 a.m. to about 1:30 a.m. or 11 p.m. to 1:30 a.m. in the morning. So after The Honeymooners, I put The Twilight Zone, which Joe did do a great recap of. It had everything. It had all those elements of drama and horror and science fiction and comedy and everything in between. And Rod Serling's from my hometown, so I definitely have
Wow.
a favorite feeling with him. Number 3, I did put The Odd Couple in number 3 because I think there's like The Honeymooners, there's a real simplicity to The Odd Couple. Yeah, it's in the 70s, and you're not seeing people on cell phones, but it's just to me a show that just never ages. The situations that they go through are timeless, and I think it's the best sitcom of all time. I really do. Number 2, I put The Sopranos. I know we were trying to not go with recent shows. The show debuted 25 years ago plus. It just like the Twilight Zone. The Sopranos has everything. It has comedy. It has violence. It has sex. It has everything imaginable. But the acting is so incredible. And my wife and I are binging it again right now. And it just never gets old. It's like watching a feature film quality episode every night because it's such a high quality show. And James Gandolfini, I mean, what he was able to accomplish. He's playing a mafia thug who people love because he was so relatable and he had so much humanity in his portrayal of Tony Soprano. And number one, I put a show on the list which you both mentioned earlier. I think Star Trek it's become a cultural phenomenon, but it did so many things that we kind of take for granted today. I mean, Star Trek was the first show where when the show began and they would show you the title of the episode, people would get to know, like, oh, this is that episode because they knew the titles of the episodes. And it was the first show where they would print out like episode guides and books and things. And after that, there'd be other shows where you'd purchase like an episode guide. Oh, Doctor Who, there's like 20 seasons and here's all the episodes. But Star Trek was kind of the first show that people would want to read about all the episodes. And Star Trek was so iconic and so different. I mean, Star Trek debuted at a time when Gomer Pyle was the typical norm of a TV show, and here was Star Trek with its universe and Starfleet and Klingons and a whole universe to itself, and it never really found its niche in ratings on the network, but in reruns in the 70s, it became this phenomenon. And by the time the movie series began in the late 70s, it was almost like it had missed its big window of popularity, but the movies became really popular. And of course, as we talked about earlier, there were other Star Treks after that too. So Star Trek rounds out, which is hopefully a good 100 list for me.
All righty. I'll wrap this sucker up, right?
Let's hear it.
10, Twilight Zone. 9, 60 Minutes. 8, Sesame Street. 7, Perry Mason. 6, Saturday Night Live. 5, The Sopranos. 4, The Honeymooners. 3, All in the Family. 2, The Tonight Show, but that includes the Steve Allen and Jack Parr and Johnny Carson versions. Everything else after that you can keep. Number 1, I go with I Love Lucy because Desilu. It was the first show to look good, sound good. It was well preserved. It was well produced. The sound was different. Everything about that show was different. And the characters were funny and compelling. And you felt like you knew all 4 of the lead actors. But what Desilu did after that, you like Star Trek the best? That was a Desilu production.
It was.
Yes, it was. And it did a bunch of other shows as well. The influence that show had on TV continues to this day with every single sitcom that's on. Now, when I was a kid, I watched I Love Lucy, said, I'm never getting married. Right? Right? That was my takeaway as a child. But I will say this, as I've matured, I understand it more. It's a very funny show. And it had when Lucy had her baby, there's another one of those iconic TV moments that the whole country stopped. And and you got to remember, there's early TV shows, and why I included so many. You got to remember, there's 2 or 3 stations for everybody back then. So when you had a hit TV show, you were reaching millions upon millions of people. The ratings for those shows were way higher individually than today's number 1s and number 2. So listen, TV's brought us all a lot of entertainment, and those are our lists. And when we all wrap up here, I'm going to read the final tabulations. But guys, what do you think? How'd it go?
I thought it was great. To echo what you just said about I Love Lucy, Bob. I mean, that was the first show to ever be inducted into the TV Hall of Fame. And you just talked about the quality of it and the way it looked. You watch that show today, and it's unbelievable that to think that it was filmed in the 50s, and it looks like it was filmed yesterday.
Yeah, yeah.
The quality is unbelievable, and that was all Desi Arnaz. Mm-hmm. That was his vision, and he was such a smart guy. Like, people don't think about that, but I mean, don't get me wrong, Lucille Ball, a comic genius, but I mean, Desi Arnaz was really the brains behind that show and the filming of that show, and just knowing that, it needed to be preserved for later generations. But yeah, I think that the list was, I thought it was a really, really good list. I think it had a good mix of of the shows from the past with a sprinkling of shows from later
today.
years, you know.
Well, you're talking about Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz. Jackie Gleason did much the same thing. He knew his show was good, and he was using that electronic cam that you see in the closing credits, which that show also looks mint when you look back at those things. He knew that thing would run forever somehow. He knew he would get rerun residuals, and they did.
Yeah.
Amazing talents, amazing visions some of these people had. Not to mention some funny shows and some great dramas too. So, you got to love it. Steve, what are your impressions of what's been going down here?
No, I'm really happy to hear your list along with mine, and I think we did a great job giving the listeners an outdated list of the greatest shows of all time. I mean, if you go to any website, if you just Google, a list of 100 greatest shows and say the Variety list comes up, or the Rolling Stone list, or another list, you're just going to see shows that debuted in 2000. It's just like, it's the three of us are wrestling guys. If you're on the internet and you see somebody puts a list up, who are the 25 greatest wrestlers of all time, inevitably they're going to be wrestlers that debuted in the year 2000 or since. You're not going to see Luthez on the list. You're not going to see Vern Gagne or Bruno. You're going to see the latest greatest thing. And with these TV shows, it's just the same thing. You want to pay homage to Lucy and Star Trek and these shows, the Andy Griffith that stand out. So many of these new shows. I mean, Game of Thrones is great, but it's not my cup of tea. I just don't care for it.
No matter what era you grew up in, it's Friday night. We're all out of school, right? You had your choice of stuff you wanted to watch. Me personally, I chose The Odd Couple and Love American Style on ABC on Friday nights, which was on at that first part of my youth. I remember that. And if it's a show that you remember really, like you remember what night it was on, what time it was on. Laugh-In was on at 7:30 on Monday nights on NBC. The Odd Couple bounced around between Thursdays and Fridays. Sesame Street every day at 4:00 in my market. I don't know about you guys. You remember this stuff your whole life. That's when you give a little, credit for television for, enlightening us, informing us, or it should inform us anyway. Educate us. It should educate us anyway. Make us laugh, make us cry, make us mad. I mean, we cannot escape television. It is too much a part of worldwide culture, no matter how you get it, streaming or cable or through rabbit ears. Everybody's got a TV.
And that's a good point too, Bob. And just to talk about what you're saying about what night these shows were on and what we grew up with. It's so funny that, it's such a different generation now that, I think all three of us, when we were all growing up, you really had to watch the shows when they were on. And that's why these shows were so important. I mean, if you were doing something else at 8:00 at night on whatever night, let's say Thursday, and you missed Cheers, you weren't going to see Cheers. I mean, that was it. It wasn't like today where you can just go online and just find it on a streaming service or DVR or something like that. So I think that's something too. And going back even further, I mean, in the 50s and the 60s, I mean, shows like I Love Lucy or The Honeymooners, I mean, there was no such thing. If you missed that show, you missed it, until whatever. So it was appointment viewing, and I think that's why a lot of these shows are so well remembered. It's because it was an event. It was like to watch those shows, you had to set aside time and say, okay, at 8:00 tonight, it's I Love Lucy, or at 8:00 tonight, it's All in the Family, or whatever the show was,
Right.
Not like it is now where it's just, there's so many different ways to watch it. You miss a show, big deal. You watch it the next day while you're having lunch,
Yeah, that's the difference. And I know that there's ways that they tabulate today's ratings, but it's all different because they have to, it's like early voting. You have to factor in the people who put it on their DVR and they're going to watch it a week from now. Everything changes and everything stays the same though.
And can I just ask both of you guys one thing? I just thought it would be fun to say, like, is there one show, if you had to pick, that was one of the most popular shows, or just one of the shows that was so highly rated or influential, whatever the criteria, that you just didn't get? The show that you would say that was a big show, but you just would have to say, like, I did not like it. What would it be? I have an answer as well, but
I have an answer. Yeah. Steve, you start.
I'd say, I mean, there's many shows like that, kind of like how you guys said about Friends. I mean, there were a lot of popular shows I had never seen an episode of. I mean, the one that comes to mind right now is Magnum PI. I mean, that was on forever and a day, and it was huge in ratings. I think it was aired Thursday nights at 9 o'clock on CBS, but I never watched it. So
That's a good one.
Now, I think I'm answering this in the spirit of your question, Joe. Like a show, the question again was what?
Basically, a show that was just, you can't deny that it was influential. You can't deny that it was
Okay, yeah,
so
right.
popular, but you just never got it. It just wasn't your cup of tea.
This is a daytime afternoon talk show that I think caused more damage to the TV genre going forward than any other show I can think of. The Morton Downey Show, where people screamed at each other for an hour.
Oh, man.
There was nothing nice about that show. There wasn't anything newsworthy. It's just a bunch of people ranking on each other for a solid 60 minutes, which led to Jerry Springer, which led to all this garbage TV, all the I got this woman pregnant TV, and all the shows passed. It's led to a coarsening of communications between human beings in the United States of America, and I'm not for that. I'm not for it.
that's a good call, Bob.
It did damage. It opened up, with every little crack in the, in our psyches that show and others like it put into us. We shout at each other. Now we don't talk to each other. And I'm right. And the other guy says he's right. And nobody can be right. Nobody can be wrong. You can't be both. It's just, I just felt it did a lot of damage to television as a whole. And daytime TV is still a wasteland. There's a lot of garbage shows on today that I wouldn't even dignify with a spot on the list. I'll tell you that. Like I could have put Jerry Springer on the list. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
That was a very popular show. It was on for ages, but
absolutely.
Come on now. That's like, it's like, you know what? It's like empty calories. There's no nutrition there.
Bob,
Well, how about you, Joe? Was there a show that would meet that criteria for you?
I do have a show that I'll mention in a second, but I will say, Bob, I hope this doesn't get me banned from future episodes of the pod because I love the Morton Downey Jr. show. I feel like it was for its time, it was good. I get what you're saying about the future shows. Like I was never into Jerry Springer and all that stuff, but Morton Downey, for some reason, I always got a kick out of it. It's just one of those shows that did resonate with me. So I will say I did like that show. For me, this one is a huge show that was on all of our lists, and I just have to admit, it just never really resonated with me, is MASH. I know it was a popular show. I know it was one of the highest rated shows ever. But for some reason, I've tried watching a couple of episodes, and I don't know if it's an age thing, but it just never did it for me, And I completely understand that it's on most people's lists of the greatest shows ever, and that's why obviously I put it on my list because I know the influence it had.
Right.
But for me, it just didn't do it.
Well, first of all, it's a dramedy, not a comedy. A show can't be straight. Just they wisecrack, but it wasn't a flat on. I think the early first season was more of a comedy, but then it got real serious as the series went on, and it had to, based on the subject matter. However, do I want to watch something that, humanly terrifying every week? And the idea of Hogan's Heroes as a sitcom, you have no idea how many people that show offended. We'll just put it that way. All right, just from the premise of it, they wouldn't get near it. But yet it was a hit.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess. Well, I don't know who said this. Tragedy plus time equals comedy, I guess. I don't know.
There you go.
I don't know if that's true or not, but I've heard that expression more than once.
I'm just really happy with this list, and I think the listeners will be happy with it too. Honestly,
I think that, and I think obviously we didn't want to leave out so many modern shows, and we did obviously throw in some like The Sopranos and things like that. Obviously, that's not to say there's not a lot of quality shows. I mean, in the 2000s and in the future, so many great shows. You had Breaking Bad, you had Sons of Anarchy, you had The Shield, even The Office, yeah. And even though I am not a fan, and this is another show that I've never seen in my life, but you can't talk about TV without saying The Real World. I mean, that basically spawned reality, TV as we know it today.
I thought about putting it on the list, but I didn't want to.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I've never seen it. I just know that so many of my friends and so many people talk about it, how it was so big. It's just, there's so many, like you had said earlier, Bob. I mean, how could you limit it to 100? But I mean,
no, it's there. I mean, I think when I tabulate the list, there's at least 45, 50 shows left over because all our list was so different that you couldn't possibly fit them all on, which only goes to show you there's probably awesome classic stuff we realize we left off and go, oh, shoot. But what I like about the way we compiled the list, I'm looking at it right now. It's pretty comprehensive, and it also does take into account all of the eras from each decade of television. I love the list. I think this is the most comprehensive of all the list shows that Steve and I have done so far, and it's all opinion. All opinion. Right. With me, I try to put a little factual basis behind my opinions, but for the most part, I think it's a fair list, and that's what I like best about it. So anyway, folks, there you go. The TV 100. Write to us. I'll give you the email address. Write to us and let us know what you think of the list. Tell us we're full of it. Tell us that you love the list. Tell us the shows that you thought should have been on the list. We like it all. We like complaints. We like compliments, and we like. I like pizza personally. I don't know about you guys, but yeah, Steve just put his fist in the air. Yeah.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you, Joe, for joining us. It was a lot of fun.
I appreciate it, and Steve, you might get a kick out of this. My last feature that I did was just a few days ago on Alan Howarth, who is a composer, for a lot of different movies. And being that you put Star Trek as number one on your list, he did sound for the Star Trek motion picture movie, the first Star Trek movie. So I was able to check him out a few days ago. I did a review of his performance out in Huntington, Long Island. I appreciate it. But as far as this, I had a great time doing this list with both of you.
And we hope it's a blast for everybody listening out there. Folks, Steve Gennarelli, find him on the Stick to Wrestling podcast with John McAdam. Find Joe here. Hopefully he'll come and join us again soon, both of these guys. But Joe, again, GenerationXWire.com. Entertainment news you don't find everywhere. And you can find me here toiling away in this enclosed office. I'm sweltering. I am hungry. I am ready to take a nap, but not before I read you guys the final 100. Stay tuned. It's coming right up right now. All right, everybody. This is the TV 100, our picks for the greatest TV series of all time. Now, as in all tabulations, there's got to be a margin of error, and in our case, the margin of error is plus or minus 100%. Some of the shows became a tie because they got the same number of points. All right, let's rock and roll. Here we go. Number 100, Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? The X-Files, Mystery Science Theater 3000, a tie. 99, Alice. 97, another tie, Modern Family and Murphy Brown. Number 96, Family. Number 93 was a three-way tie, Will and Grace, Doctor Who, and My Three Sons. 92 was Lost. 91, Ally McBeal. Number 89 is a tie, The Match Game, and Kojak. Number 88, The Bugs Bunny Roadrunner Hour. Number 86 was a tie, Family Guy and Married with Children. 84, a tie, Candid Camera, 2020. 82, a tie, The Fugitive and Dragnet. 80, a tie, Father Knows Best and Green Acres. Number 79, CBS News Sunday Morning. 78, Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color. 77, Lassie. 76, Twin Peaks. 75, Maude. 73 was the tie, Miami Vice and Survivor. 72, The Rockford Files. 70, a tie, Mad Men and Frasier. A three-way tie at 67, American Bandstand, The Larry Sanders Show, and Breaking Bad. 65 was a tie, The Little Rascals or Our Gang, and The Great American Dream Machine. 64, Little House on the Prairie. 63, The Flintstones. 62, The Muppet Show. 61, Mission Impossible. 60, LA Law. 59, South Park. 58, The Ernie Kovacs Show. 57, Oprah. 56, Batman. 55, General Hospital. 54, ER. 53, The Waltons. 51 was a tie, Monty Python's Flying Circus and Sex and the City. 50, Playhouse 90. 49, Hill Street Blues. 48, Get Smart. 45, a three-way tie, Rhoda Martin's Laugh-In, Bewitched, and NYPD Blue. 43 was a tie with You Bet Your Life with Groucho Marx and In Living Color. 42, Friends. 41, Sanford and Son. 40, Your Show of Shows. 39, The Beverly Hillbillies. 38, Jeopardy! 37, The Jeffersons. 36, Columbo. 35, The Bill Cosby Show. 34, SCTV. 32 was a tie, Taxi and Happy Days. 31, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. 30, The Golden Girls. 29, Law and Order. 28, Dallas. 27, The Wonder Years. 26, The Ed Sullivan Show. 25, Perry Mason. 24, Bonanza. 23, Sesame Street. 22, The Jack Benny Program. 21, The Sopranos. 19 is a tie, The Dick Van Dyke Show, The Carol Burnett Show. 18, The Bob Newhart Show. 17, Barney Miller. 16, Mary Tyler Moore. 14 is a tie, The Simpsons and a Late Night with David Letterman. 13 is Cheers. 12, Star Trek. 11, Gunsmoke. And here's the top 10. Number 10 is 60 Minutes. Number 9, The Odd Couple. Number 8, MASH. Number 7, Saturday Night Live. Number 6, Seinfeld. Number 5, The Honeymooners. Number 4, The Tonight Show, as hosted by Steve Allen, Jack Parr, and Johnny Carson. Number 3, The Twilight Zone. Number 2, I Love Lucy. And number 1, All in the Family. All right, to answer tonight's trivia question for you, the sound clip at the beginning of the show is from Stories of the Century, the 1950s Western series featuring Matt Clark, Railroad Detective. And that's just the intro to the second show about Billy the Kid. So there's your answer. The show didn't make our top 100, but it's a great show, and it almost came close. Write to us at outdatedwrestling@gmail.com if you would like to query us about our choices. Make your own choices. Make your own list. Do whatever you want. We'll read all of it. Our website is outdatedentertainment.buzzsprout.com. All of our episodes are listed there. The few that we've done so far in this new venture here. And you click a button, find them there. We're also available anywhere you get your podcast apps, plus YouTube, minus tune in for whatever reason. I don't understand. We'll get there eventually, but for right now, we're everywhere else. I think that's it for now. We put in many hours on this particular show, a lot of time tabulating, a lot of time talking to each other. I want to thank Joe and Stephen again. It's just been a great pleasure and honor to work with them. But right now, the outdated Bob needs some Betty Bye. So I'm Bob Smith. This is the Outdated Entertainment Hour. And like Ringo Starr continues to say this day, peace and love.